Nathan Sterling, my groom of exactly 2 hours, swayed on the stage, leaned over the 5-tier vanilla orchid cake, and vomited a mixture of expensive scotch and bile all over the white fondant. The ballroom gasped, but Nathan didn't even wipe his mouth before grabbing the microphone with a sticky hand. "Don't worry about the cake, folks," he slurred, pointing a shaking finger at me where I sat frozen at the head table. "It cost more than Isabella's dress anyway. Hell, it cost more than her car." My name is Isabella Rossi. To the 300 guests in this rented ballroom, I am a 26-year-old struggling single mother who struck gold by marrying into the wealthy Sterling family. They see a woman who drives a dented sedan, shops at thrift stores, and scans dinner menus from right to left. What they do not know is that my late father, Giovanni Rossi, left me a blind trust containing $3,200,000 that is impossible to trace without specific codes. I am not the mouse in this trap. I am the glue. My new mother-in-law, Victoria Sterling, didn't rush to help her son. She glided over to my table, her gold sequins scratching against my bare arm as she leaned in. "Stop crying, darling," she whispered, though my eyes were perfectly dry. "It's embarrassing. You knew what you were signing up for. You bring the debt, we bring the name. Just sit there and look pretty until we tell you to leave." She patted my cheek with a hand that felt like ice. I looked up at the stage where Nathan was now laughing maniacally, trying to wipe his mouth with a silk napkin. This was the man who, for 6 months, had pretended to be a charming, generous entrepreneur. He had courted me with flowers he claimed were imported, but still had gas station stickers on the plastic. He had promised to take care of me and my non-existent financial problems. It was all an act. The Sterling family didn't have wealth. They had maxed out credit lines and a Ponzi scheme running on fumes. They targeted me because a friend, my traitorous best friend Chloe, had fed them a lie that I was set to inherit a modest $50,000 from a distant aunt. They didn't want a wife. They wanted a bailout. Victoria sat down next to me, pouring herself a glass of champagne. "Tomorrow morning, we'll go to the bank," she said, her voice dropping the fake sweetness entirely. "We need to consolidate your assets with Nathan's accounts, for tax purposes, of course. Marriage makes everything community property, Isabella. It's the law." She smiled, a shark showing its rows of teeth. "And once that's done, maybe we can discuss an allowance for you, if you behave." Nathan stumbled off the stage and fell into the chair beside me, reeking of vomit and greed. "Did you tell her, Mom?" he burped. "Did you tell her she's got to sign the power of attorney tomorrow?" He grabbed my wrist, his grip bruising. "No more secrets, Bella. What's mine is mine, and what's yours is mine." I looked at his bloodshot eyes, then at Victoria's predatory grin. They thought the game was over. They thought they had legally bound me to their sinking ship and could now drain me dry. I reached into my cheap clutch and touched the smooth, cold surface of the small river rock my father had painted for me when I was 10. On one side, a crude stick figure with a sword. On the other, the words "Warrior Princess." It was the only thing of real value I had brought into this room. I looked at Nathan, then at Victoria, and let a slow, genuine smile spread across my face. It wasn't the smile of a victim. "You're right, Victoria," I said, my voice steady enough to cut through the music. "The law is very specific about marriage." I looked toward the back of the room where my cousin, the officiant, was quietly packing his bag. He caught my eye and tapped his breast pocket. The marriage license was folded inside it, unsigned by the county clerk, and completely invalid because Nathan's signature on the document earlier was nothing but an illegible, intoxicated scrawl. By law, he was too impaired to consent. My cousin wasn't filing it. Legally, I was still Isabella Rossi, single woman, and the Sterlings were celebrating a robbery that had already failed. For 6 months, I drove a rusted 2004 Honda Civic with a broken air conditioner in the Arizona heat just to see if Nathan Sterling would sweat. He complained about the seats, he whined about the lack of Bluetooth, but he stayed. He stayed because I had let slip a carefully calculated lie that my poor aunt had left me a single account containing $50,000, and I didn't know how to access it yet. That was the bait. My father, Giovanni Rossi, had spent the last decade of his life building a fortress around my future. He had been scammed once in his 30s by a woman who claimed to love him, and he swore his daughter would never be prey. Predators smell blood, Bella, he used to tell me, tapping his temple, but they are blinded by gold. Give them a little flash and they won't see the cage. The cage was the bait account. It was a real bank account under my name, visible to anyone running a basic credit check, containing exactly $50,000, but it had a digital tripwire. Any attempt to access, transfer, or even view the routing number with unauthorized credentials didn't just deny access, it sent a silent, Level 1 alert directly to the Federal Bureau of Investigation. 3 weeks before the wedding, the alarm tripped. I was sitting in my living room when my phone buzzed with a notification from a secure app disguised as a calculator. Unauthorized access attempt. IP traced, Sterling Real Estate Office. They hadn't acted alone. To bypass the security questions, they needed personal data, my first pet's name, my mother's maiden name, the street I grew up on. There was only one person outside my family who knew those answers. Chloe, my maid of honor. The girl I had shared my lunch with since kindergarten had sold me out for a promise of a cut. The next morning, I wasn't sitting in a bridal boutique. I was sitting in the back of a black SUV with Special Agent Kate Liu. She was the daughter of my father's oldest friend and the only person who knew the full extent of the Rossi estate. "They aren't just greedy, Isabella," Kate said, handing me a dossier thick with surveillance photos. "The Sterlings are a laundering hub. Victoria moves stolen cash through shell real estate companies. Nathan is the face, the charmer who finds the victims, and they are escalating." She flipped a page to show a photo of a young woman, barely 20. This was their last mark, Sophie's mom. When they drained her life insurance, she didn't just lose her house, she lost her will to live. Kate's voice hardened. "We have them on financial fraud, but we need the smoking gun. We need to catch them laundering the money in real time. That's why you have to go through with the wedding." So I did. I wore the dress, I walked the aisle, I let Nathan vomit on the cake. Now, 12 hours after the reception, I was back in my small rental house, stripping off the cheap wedding makeup. The wedding license was safe in my cousin's shredder. Legally, I was a ghost to them. A heavy knock rattled my front door. I checked the security feed on my phone. It wasn't Nathan. It was Caleb Sterling, Nathan's older brother. He was the quiet one, the one who supposedly ran the legitimate side of the family business. He stood on my porch in a dark pea coat, looking regretful and harmless. I opened the door, clutching a tissue, playing the part of the devastated bride. "Isabella," said, his voice soft and filled with rehearsed empathy, "I am so incredibly sorry. What Nathan did today, it was unforgivable." He stepped inside without asking, glancing around my modest living room with a look of calculating pity. "Look, I know you're scared. Mom is already talking about liquidating your assets to cover Nathan's gambling debts. She's ruthless." He moved closer, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "I can't let them do this to you. I want to help you hide that inheritance before they get power of attorney. I have a secure safe in my office. If we move the cash or the access keys tonight, they'll never find it. I looked at him, the good brother, the savior. It was the oldest trick in the book. Good cop, bad cop. Nathan scares the victim, and Caleb sweeps in to protect the assets right into his own pocket. I sniffled loudly, widening my eyes. You would do that for me, Caleb? But where would we put it? I don't trust safes. I have it all in a safety deposit box at First National. Caleb's eyes flickered. The greed was subtle, but it was there, tightening the corners of his mouth. A safety deposit? Do you have the key? Yes, I lied, my hand trembling as I reached for my purse. But I'm so afraid Victoria will find it. Give it to me, Caleb said, extending a hand that didn't shake at all. I'll keep it safe, I promise. I looked at his hand, then at his face. He didn't know he was asking for the key to a cell. I placed the heavy brass key into Caleb's palm, watching his fingers curl around it like a talon. It was a standard safety deposit key, stamped with the number 402, but to Caleb, it was the keys to the kingdom. Please, Caleb, I whispered, forcing a tremble into my voice. There is $50,000 in cash in there, my grandmother's savings. But there's something else. Nathan left a black notebook at my apartment last week. He called it his insurance policy. It has lists of names, account numbers, routing codes. I put it in the box for safekeeping because I was scared. Caleb's eyes didn't just flicker this time. They dilated. The mask of the concerned brother vanished for a split second, replaced by the panic of a co-conspirator who realizes a smoking gun has been left on the table. He didn't just want the money anymore. He needed to destroy that notebook before the FBI found it. You did the right thing, Isabella, he said, his voice tight. That notebook sounds dangerous. I'll make sure it never hurts anyone. I'm going to the bank right now. I have a contact there who can let me into the vault after hours for emergencies. Stay here. Don't answer the door for anyone else. He turned and practically jogged to his car. I watched through the peephole as his taillights disappeared down the street. I waited exactly 10 seconds. Then I locked the deadbolt, straightened my spine, and wiped the fake tears from my cheeks. He's clear, I said to the empty room. The door to my kitchen swung open. Two people stepped out from the shadows where they had been listening to every word. They weren't family. They were something stronger. First was Sarah, a forensic accountant who had lost her firm after Victoria Sterling framed her for embezzlement to cover their own tracks. She carried a laptop thick with encryption software. Next was Marcus, a former district attorney whose career was ruined when Nathan bribed a witness in a case against the Sterling family 3 years ago. This was the Phoenix Alliance. We were the ashes the Sterlings had left behind, and we had formed a fire they never saw coming. He took the bait harder than I expected, Sarah said, setting her laptop on my dining table. She pulled up a live feed. It showed the interior of the bank vault at First National, a feed Agent Lou had shared with us. He thinks he's scrubbing a crime scene. He has no idea he's walking into a federal trap. The notebook in the box? Marcus asked, checking the hidden cameras we had installed behind the living room mirror. It's real, I said, but it's not Nathan's. It's a decoy I wrote myself, filled with nonsense numbers that look like offshore accounts. By the time Caleb realizes it's fake, the FBI will have him on camera breaking and entering a federally insured vault with intent to destroy evidence. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Victoria Sterling. We need to settle this. Nathan and I are coming over. Lawyers are drafting the annulment. Be ready to sign. Showtime, I said. Marcus adjusted his tie. Remember the plan. They are coming here to bully you into submission. They need you to sign a non-disclosure agreement and transfer power of attorney before the wedding mistake becomes public. You need to stall them until Caleb trips the alarm." "I know," I said. I looked at the coffee table where I had placed a single folder. Inside was the settlement I was prepared to offer, a single sheet of paper with the definition of the RICO Act printed on it. I dimmed the lights. Sarah and Marcus retreated into the guest bedroom, where they would monitor the feeds and record everything. The house was quiet, but the air felt charged, like the moments before a thunderstorm breaks. Headlights swept across my front window. A car door slammed, then another. I sat in the center of the living room, clutching the painted rock in my lap. The predator was at the door, bringing her favorite son to finish the kill. They knocked, 3 sharp, arrogant raps. I checked the time, 2:14 in the morning. Caleb should be entering the bank right now. I stood up, took a deep breath, and opened the door to let the monsters in. Victoria Sterling swept into my living room like she was inspecting a property she intended to condemn. She didn't remove her coat. She simply dropped a heavy stack of legal documents onto my coffee table right next to the painted rock. Nathan followed her, looking pale and sweating through his dress shirt. The arrogance from the wedding was still there, but it was brittle now, held together by the delusion that they were still the ones in control. "Here is the situation, Isabella," Victoria said, her voice clipped and bored. "You are going to sign a full annulment agreement. You are going to sign a non-disclosure agreement stating you will never speak of this family or our business dealings, and you are going to transfer the $50,000 from your aunt's account to us as a consulting fee for the distress you caused my son." Nathan kicked the leg of my armchair. "And the car," he sneered. "I want the title to your car. I can scrap it for parts." I looked at them, really looked at them, for the last time. They were small. Without their lies, they were just common thieves in expensive costumes. "I can't sign these, Victoria," I said, my voice calm. Victoria's eyes narrowed. "You don't have a choice. We have lawyers who will bury you in litigation for the next decade. You will be homeless before you even get a court date. Sign the papers." I picked up the remote control from the side table. "I think you should look at the television first." Nathan laughed, a sharp barking sound. "What, are you going to put on cartoons?" I pressed the power button. The 60-inch screen on the wall flickered to life. It wasn't cartoons. It was a high-definition, live, black-and-white feed from the interior of the First National Bank vault. The room went deadly silent. On the screen, Caleb Sterling was on his knees, hands zip-tied behind his back. 6 federal agents in tactical gear surrounded him. One was bagging the black notebook he had tried to steal. Another was holding Caleb's phone. That's Caleb," Nathan whispered, the color draining from his face. Why are the police there?" "Because he tried to break into a federally insured vault to destroy evidence of your RICO violations," I said, standing up, "and because I gave him the key." Victoria spun toward me, her face twisting into a mask of pure fury. "You set him up, you little rat! I will kill you!" She lunged, but stopped when my bedroom door opened. Sarah and Marcus stepped out. Marcus held up his phone, recording. Sarah held her laptop. "I wouldn't do that," Marcus said, his voice carrying the weight of a seasoned prosecutor. "Assaulting a witness adds 10 years to the sentence." Victoria froze. Her eyes darted from the screen to the strangers in my house, her mind racing to find an angle, a lie, a way out. She pulled her phone from her pocket. "I'm calling the family attorney," she hissed. "You might want to check your messages first," I said. "Caleb just texted you." It was the final piece of the trap. Agent Lou, watching the live feed from the command center, had utilized Caleb's confiscated phone to send the specific distress signal we knew Victoria was waiting for. Victoria looked down at her screen. I knew exactly what she was reading. "Mom, I burned all the evidence. It's gone. We are safe." I watched the tension leave her shoulders. She believed it. She believed her loyal soldier had succeeded right before getting caught, or perhaps she thought he was texting from a hiding spot. The greed overpowered her caution. She needed to confirm the next step of the launder. She typed a reply. Her thumbs moved quickly. She hit send. A split second later, a loud ping echoed from Sarah's laptop. "Got it," Sarah said. She hit a key, and the text message conversation was projected onto the television screen, overlaying the image of the arrested Caleb. "Victoria, good work. Now transfer the remaining funds to the Shell LLC and get out. We will handle the girl." The words hung on the screen, 10 feet tall. "That," Sarah announced, pointing at the screen, "is irrefutable proof of conspiracy to commit money laundering and obstruction of justice. You just confirmed the existence of the illegal funds and ordered their movement." Victoria stared at the screen. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked at her phone, then at the TV, realizing she had just signed her own confession. Nathan began to hyperventilate. "Mom? Mom, what did you do?" "It's over, Victoria," I said. "The $50,000 was bait. The marriage was a sting, and I am not broke." I picked up the painted rock from the table and held it tight. My father left me $3 million, and he left me the instructions on how to catch predators like you. The front door burst open. "Federal agents, hands in the air." Agent Kate Liu led the team in, weapons drawn. The room filled with the chaos of shouting voices and heavy boots. I watched as Nathan was shoved against the wall, sobbing like a child. I watched as Victoria was handcuffed, her coat falling open to reveal the cheap lining of her sequin dress. She looked at me one last time as they dragged her toward the door. The arrogance was gone. There was only fear. "Who are you?" she whispered. I gripped the rock, feeling the rough paint of the sword against my palm. "I'm the warrior princess," I said, "and you're trespassing." 6 months later, the gavels slammed down in the federal courthouse, echoing like the closing of a heavy book. I sat in the front row, wearing a tailored cream suit that cost more than the Honda Civic I used to drive. Next to me sat Sophie, a 15-year-old girl with anxious eyes who was holding my hand so tight her knuckles were white. The judge didn't waste time on mercy. The evidence we had gathered, the text messages, the bank vault video, the black notebook trap, was overwhelming. Victoria Sterling, the matriarch of the crime family, was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole for racketeering, wire fraud, and money laundering. As the marshals led her away, she didn't look at me. She just stared at the floor, a broken old woman who had traded her freedom for numbers on a screen. Nathan received 15 years. He cried when the sentence was read. The charm was gone, leaving only a hollow coward who had preyed on women to fund his delusions of grandeur. Caleb got 12 years. His good brother act hadn't fooled the jury for a second. And Chloe, my former best friend, stood before the judge shaking. She received 3 years of probation and 500 hours of community service for being an accessory. But her real sentence was social exile. In a town this size, nobody trusts a traitor. When she looked back at me, silently begging for forgiveness, I looked right through her. We walked out of the courthouse into the blinding afternoon sun. The press was there, cameras flashing. The headlines had shifted from Gold Digger Bride to The Millionaire Sting Operation. I didn't stop for interviews. I had more important business. I drove my new car, a sleek, safe SUV, to a quiet neighborhood on the north side of town. I pulled into the driveway of a beautiful, sun-drenched colonial house. It wasn't a rental. It was bought and paid for in cash. "Is this it?" Sophie asked, her voice small. "This is it," I said, handing her a set of keys. Sophie was the daughter of the woman in Agent Lou's file, the victim who had lost everything to the Sterlings and taken her own life. Since that tragedy, Sophie had bounced between foster homes, but not anymore. The adoption papers had been finalized that morning. "It's big," she whispered. "It's safe," I corrected, "and it's ours." Using the $3,200,000 my father left me, I hadn't just bought a house. I had established the Phoenix Restitution Fund. Every dollar recovered from the Sterling seizures was being funneled back to their previous victims. Sarah, the forensic accountant, ran the fund. Marcus, the prosecutor, handled the legal work. We were rebuilding the lives the Sterlings had destroyed. That evening, as the sun set, I drove alone to the cemetery. The grass was green and freshly cut around the simple marble headstone. Giovanni Rossi. Father. Protector. I knelt in the dirt, ignoring the stains on my expensive trousers. I pulled the painted rock from my pocket. It was worn smooth now, the warmth of my hand having seeped into the stone over the last 6 months of hell. I placed it gently on top of the headstone, the stick figure with the sword facing out. "You were right, Papa," I whispered. "The gold didn't save me. The rock did." I stood up, brushing the dirt from my knees. The nightmare was over. The predators were in cages, and the mouse? The mouse was actually a lioness all along. I walked back to my car, leaving the warrior princess to guard his sleep. That is my story. If you have ever been underestimated, if you have ever been targeted by people who thought you were weak, remember this: the loudest person in the room is usually the most fragile, and the quietest person is often the one holding the keys to the vault. Stay sharp, stay safe, and never let them see you coming.